If you're thinking about moving abroad, this is where you start. Not with a country, not with like what visas is the best thing. Um, After living abroad for 15 years, I've moved to 5 different countries, lived on 4 continents. This is what I learned about moving abroad each time. And at the point when you're thinking about moving abroad, make sure you do these things first. And I'm going to explain right now. First, like the truth about moving abroad, right? And never mind, I'm very it was a chilly day. I'm feeling pretty chilly, and so I'm all warm today. But the truth about moving abroad is that it isn't like just one simple decision. It's actually several layered decisions happening at different times. And I think we tend to treat it like a linear process. And maybe you're thinking about what steps, bang, 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 you need to do in order to move abroad in whichever country. And you probably think about it like pick a country, get the visa, move, thrive, right? And yes, it goes in this way, but there are so many like steps in between that, overlapping. Sometimes things happen before the other, things like this. The reality is kind of like a lot messier. And I think there's a lot more internal work that happens um, than we think, right? And so I think this is first the truth about moving abroad that you should like get in your minds, like think about it and really understand that this is the core of moving abroad. It's several layered decisions happening at different times. And I kind of like spoke about different layers, like there are several layers. And I'm thinking of like let's chop up the layers, right? And the first one is for me the internal shift, like the internal work that you have to do to get things going, right? Sorry. And I think the internal shift that's needed has to start before you research anything. Like you Google best countries for a Jamaican wanting to live abroad or best countries for expats, right? Um, there is a shift that happens, and I think something in you changes. And you feel it, and maybe you can't quite name it, or maybe you think it's, for me, it's normally I've outgrown my life. I've outgrown this part of my life, and I want to explore a different version of myself and a different culture and do it somewhere else, right? This is usually kind of like the internal shift that happens right at the start of me thinking about moving abroad. It's a problem. This burping. I'm not nervous today, but I'm burping. I don't know. This layer, the internal shift, is kind of like thinking about why you're even considering this. And this is for me the setting of the intention, like the foundation and the core of why you move abroad. I think most people skip this part, and you might be tempted to go straight into logistics, but I think it's like the wrong order, and you're missing a step and you're missing a big step. And this is understanding your intention and going through that internal shift and acknowledging it for why you want to move abroad. And then after you do that, there's kind of like this second layer that happens, and that's, I don't know, kind of like aligning your intention with what you want to do next. And what I mean is kind of like finding the right fit for how you want to live. It's not like the best country, but understanding what you need to know what's gonna fit for like what's gonna align with how you want to live your life in this next chapter. So thinking about things like what do you need to like feel sane? Like what kind of pace of life do you need? What kind of like are you willing to navigate a different language? And if so, the difficulty or the degree of difference that you have between your current native language or the language that you're fluent and advanced in and the language that you're going to now need to speak in this new country. What kind of like community or connections do you want to have or need in your first like few months or first year in that place? What kind of weather? Like people don't think about this like the weather. What kind of weather do you want? What kind of like climate weather do you want to spend your time? For me, I wanted a place that had different changing seasons. This was important for me, or this was like something, yeah, this was something that I wanted. I'm from Jamaica. It's 30 degrees every single day, all day, every day, 24/7 at 7 a.m., at midnight, at noon. It's 30 degrees, right? In Kingston. I did not want to move to another place where it was just one static temperature or weather, and it's kind of like hot or dry or wet. Like it's either it's hot or it rains. Like nothing else really happens, which is great for predictability, but I wanted something else throughout the time because kind of like I wanted to wear boots and coats because fall is my favorite season. This is why, really. But yeah, but think about the weather. Like, do you want to stay in a place that has tons of changes in weather or like different types of natural phenomenons. I don't natural disasters. I don't really like this word, but a place where there's hurricane season, like in Jamaica, okay, you want it hot and you're okay with having a hurricane season, or going through the monsoon season, which is the same as hurricane season, but yeah. Or a place that has lots of earthquakes. Do you want to deal with that? Tornadoes, tons of rain. So there is like more chances of like flooding or just like heavy rain. Like think about the weather is what I'm saying. Like what do you need? What kind of like social norms do you need? How people go about living their lives, what are their values, things like this. Like what think about what you need to feel sane in the life that you want or for how you want to live and try to align that as best as possible with where you're going to go next. So it's not necessarily like the best country. I think it's like where you can find like the best thing. So like for me, having healthcare, like subsidized healthcare, or was important. So I wanted a place that had good infrastructure with healthcare and also that was affordable and accessible in a real way. And if you skip this part, you might pick based on like Instagram, or you might pick the country based on, I don't know, what somebody else tells you, or what people in your life are saying, this would be a good place, or what might be like popular at the time. And you'll probably like regret it in 6 months or a year. Maybe not 6 months, but in a year you might regret it. Like this was not the right choice because it did not align with the values that you want for how you want to live in this new chapter. And then afterwards, I think we should look at, or you should look at, like the practical things. So you've gone through and like you've discussed and you're set up in your mindset in the internal shift that's needed. You kind of have like a good sense of what kind of like values you want and how they should align with how you want your next chapter to live abroad. And then next thing I think is like thinking about like practical things. Now you can think about the practical things like, okay, what visa do I qualify for? How can do I have the skills? Where can I go to have with the skills and competencies that I currently have? How do they match up? Do I actually have the skills? Um, how long do I need to get it? What is the money in terms of the budget and timeline? Do I want to find a job in the country, or do I want to set up like remote work if I already have like remote work? Can I if you're currently working, maybe you can think about transferring your remote, transforming your current job into a remote job or something. Like whatever, like the practical parts. Um, this is, I would think, like the next layer of decisions that you make if you're thinking about moving abroad. But if you lead with this, like if you start with the practical realities of this, I think you will have a bit more regret, or you'll optimize kind of for like the wrong things. And you've started in not the best order, because this is where you might get overwhelmed, because there's tons of information and there's tons of requirements and documentation and things that you need. But if you're not clear on like why you're moving, the intention, and what kind of like values and the alignment for this move abroad, then all of this part of like practical realities, visas, money, housing, blah, 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 all of that is going to just be much more overwhelming than is needed. So I don't think you should lead with this. And I think many people get caught up in this part. Another layer afterwards that you might not be thinking about is the emotional support that you is it support? I don't know if it's support, but the emotional system that you need to create and have for moving abroad, because moving abroad is not easy. It is worth it, in my opinion. It's so worth it in terms of being able to curate and design your life and build your life in the way that you want, right? But it's not like an easy process. And so it can come with certain complexities. Like this is kind of like the reality. And you need to ensure that you have that kind of like emotional, I don't know, infrastructure, like system in place within yourself, like at least an understanding of it, and start and setting it up in order to thrive in your move abroad, with your life abroad. So what I mean is kind of like, how do you handle loneliness without like spiraling? Because you might have like bouts of loneliness, or like being alone if you're not moving with family or your partner, or etc. If like you're moving by yourself, how do you handle being alone? Or do you have some kind of like idea of how you could cope and manage with it? Because sometimes you don't know, and it's when you get to the places when you kind of like figure out, well, hmm, so for example, when I moved to France the first time, France, yeah, when I moved to France the first time, it was super exciting and everything was like surreal. And I went through like this huge, very long honeymoon stage. But then after a while, I would say kind of like nostalgia kicked in, and that's how I ended up deep confronting loneliness and discovering loneliness. And kind of like when you miss out on certain like events and things like this, sometimes I don't know, there's kind of like a pang, like I wish I was there in person, stuff like this. um yeah, so how you handle some of these things can impact, like set up systems in place emotionally for this, because it's going to happen at some point. It doesn't even happen, I don't think it happens in the first year. I think it really starts happening in like year 2, year 3, and that's when the nostalgia, like the loneliness of nostalgia, kind of like pops. And you're just like, oh wow, I'm really missing out on a couple of things. Can you handle like being a beginner again? Because moving abroad is starting all over, and sometimes we get so accustomed to like being expert at things, or the familiarity of our own life is kind of like a comfort, which I talked about in my previous video about how our comfort prison or our comfort zone can help us to be stuck. But it also like this kind of like familiarity helps with like you understanding your identity or who you are and where you are in the world. And when you move abroad, that gets a little bit disrupted. And I think it's great I actually like really like this disruption because I'm able to recreate, re-evolve. I don't know if it's a word, but evolve again um in this space. And I like this part of beginner, the beginner phase, being a beginner again abroad, because I can, hmm, I don't know if it's a reinvention, but I can like things that I didn't like. It's easier to work on shifting them and fixing them because I don't have the eyes. I don't have anybody perceiving me. Like nobody knows me in this new place. So I don't have the expectations, I don't have the obligations. It's a freer space to exist in when you move abroad. And so for me, I like this beginner phase of moving abroad. But you might not like that. And not everybody revels or have like enjoys this part. So can you be a beginner again? Or what do you have in place to deal with the discomfort of being a beginner and starting all over again? Like you need to have some idea of what kind of like emotional system you're putting in place to deal with that. Mm, other things like uncertainty is like another big thing. Moving around is full of uncertainty. Even if, gosh, excuse me, moving abroad is full of uncertainty. Even if you have a job, you know how you're going to earn, your housing is all organized, you've paid your rent, or maybe you bought property. Even if all of these things are happening, there is always uncertainty for at least a few months, and sometimes it can go over into years. Can you tolerate uncertainty? Like, I think I saw this. Where did I see? But I think I saw this quote actually today on Instagram somewhere, and it was like moving abroad is uh, what was it? Kind of like moving abroad is like a certain life, or is it's a full life with 100 with uncertainty, something like this. But the point is that as secure as your life is and adventurous, because you're in a foreign place, you're living abroad in the culture that you're still learning, you're still immersing in languages, you might have like language barriers that you're still navigating, etc. You have to be able to tolerate uncertainty for a few months or even years. You do get better at it, and I think it's really great. Like it's a great teacher about dealing with the uncertainties of life when you live abroad. And I think it's such an important human experience of knowing and learning how to navigate life with uncertainties, even when so many things are secure. And there's no better place, I think, than moving abroad to live, to deal with this, to learn how to tolerate it, and to grow from it, right? So this is just something that you will confront. Um, Having this kind of like emotional system in place for these kind of like questions or these kind of like emotional needs that you might have, or you might be lacking, is I think it kind of like really, I don't know, determines whether you thrive abroad or whether you're going to like burn out very quickly. And I don't think many people talk about it enough. Um, yeah, I don't think many people talk about it enough. It's that sort of like it's how you build the resilience of living your life on your own terms. I think having a good answer or understanding what emotional infrastructure, emotional system you need in place for yourself. This is internal work. This is work that you're going to have to do, right? I think doing that will help to build up your resilience for navigating life on your own or with your family. And it's really, really important, and it determines many things in your life abroad. um, I think all of this is kind of like important to understand different layers, and I said it so many times in in my previous am I not breathing well, or I don't know, but every time I turn on this camera to talk to you, I end up like burping like a crazy person. This will be probably the mission. Will, after I don't know 100 videos, will Diedre stop burping? We will see. Excuse me. But it matters. Understanding these layers is important to understand the order in which you approach things, because doing it all at once or ignoring it or skipping, or switching the orders can impact like how overwhelming this process is, or how, I don't know, simple it is to go on. One thing, and I said it before, like don't get caught up in the research trap of things. It's important to research, but don't get like caught up in this. I need to watch all the content to gather information, even though, yeah, I'm online telling you things. Good information, but yes, don't get caught up in this trap. Because having a information dump or information overload, it does not create clarity. It just literally overloads you. So don't do it, right? The more you watch question, the more you like search for information, then the more questions you might have, the more it creates overwhelm, and you just kind of get stuck in this kind of like vicious loop. So like, don't do it. Excuse me. Why do we get caught in this like vicious research loop? I think it's I don't know, I think it's kind of like if you're someone that needs to know all the information and you need to plan, I think it's a question of like control that you might want to address. But I think it's a question of control, especially because there's so many uncertainties that's attached with moving abroad, that you want to get as much info from like external sources and things like this. But I think it really depends on like your emotional work. If you have your intentions, what you need to stay safe and aligned in the country, if you understand those things, then that is a better way to be grounded in your move abroad, because it's not like a problem to solve. Living abroad is really like redesigning your life. It's creating it in a way so that you can shape how you want to live. And it's not a problem to solve, like it's not some kind of like puzzle, but it's letting things unfold in a way where you're setting things in place and aligning your desires with how life is unfolding. Like, I think that's the real essence. And when you miss that part, and you try to find clarity from like external sources, that's when we get caught in this kind of like loop. And to get out of this, if you're feeling in this kind of like research trap or research loop, I think to get out of that kind of like trap is to stop like seeking more information and ask about what am I actually trying to figure out right now. I think once you find yourself going in a loop searching for information when you're thinking about moving abroad, that's a signal to pause and reassess your intention. Like, what are you trying to figure out right now? What is blocking me, or what is causing me some kind of like, I don't know, distress or uncertainty or whatever? Because if you don't know that question, then you won't know what you're trying to answer, and no amount of like information will help. So you need to understand the intention and really figure out what you're really understand what you're trying to figure out to get out of that loop so that you can move on to the next step to move abroad. And there are kind of like some questions that you can ask. The first one is like, why am I considering this? Or what kind of daily life do I actually want in my new life abroad? What are my non-negotiables? Like, ask those questions. Can I handle the emotional reality of living abroad, away from family, away from friends, away from things that I'm familiar with? Is that serving me for how I want to live my life next in this new chapter? Or is it going to be like more of a drain? What does success look like for me abroad? And this is not what does success mean? Is it getting permanent residency, nationality, a few adventurous years, just completely redesigning your life in a way that you're developing new habits, just putting your life in a different direction? Like, if you don't define this, you'll feel aimless, or you might regret moving abroad because you don't know what your success looks like. You don't have like an idea, so that when things are not as clear for you, you don't have anything to like look back on. Well, but I'm now on a path to permanent residency, for example. So even though I'm not figuring out, like, I don't like the food here. I don't, I'm on the path of permanent residency, and this is what I wanted for success. And so I can learn to cook my own food. Just simple things like asking yourself these questions and understanding stuff is like really important. And I talked about like knowing what your non-negotiables are. And that's not just like your nice to haves, but like what would make you leave after 6 months. Like, know what those things are and then learn to avoid them, or put things in place that will not let you fall into that trap. Or if you see them, then you know you're leaving. For example, this is a silly one, right? It's a silly one, but in France, the bathrooms are tiny, very, very tiny. I don't know, it's crazy. And there was one point, I was so tired of the tiny bathrooms that one of my non-negotiables became, I need a bathtub, because a bathroom with a bathtub is just automatically going to be bigger. Or like, even more, they have a WC water closet. So many times in France, the toilet itself is separated. It's in a separate room from the shower area. So it's like and they might not even be close by. And sometimes the toilet does not come with like a faucet, like there's no sink. and you pee or you do whatever in the toilet area in the WC. It's WC, but you just say WC. And then you have to go outside, open the door, go outside, go to the shower room, and wash your hands. Nightmare for me. Like, I don't understand this. And so, one of my non-negotiables is if the bathrooms, if there's a WC and a shower room, then the WC needs a sink. Like the toilet, it needs to be a proper half bathroom, not just toilet and nothing else. Like, no. Or it needs to be like big enough that I can create that, space where you can convert and like add like a sink on top or something, or have like put up shelves for hand sanitizer and things like this. But just in general, like this is I don't want to go through all of that. So it needs to have a sink. So if I'm renting a place, I'm looking for a place and there is a WC, if it does not have a sink, I'm not renting it. Like, no. I will take an all-in-one tiny bathroom over the WC without a sink. For example, like just simple things. What are your non-negotiables? Like understanding what those are, what would make you, I mean, that's not going to make me move after 6 months, but me knowing that will help to navigate like renting or understanding what the renting is. So bathrooms like are a big thing for me because I'm even thinking about in my book, The Map Back to You, where I talked about when I went on a trip to South Korea, to Seoul, and essentially they just have wet rooms, meaning the shower is just a hose that's attached to the face basin, to the sink, and it's just attached to the wall. Like, pop, they just put it on the wall, and the toilet is right there, and everything gets wet. The entire place gets wet. That is such a that no, 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 no. And so I had to I spent days just researching, trying to find a place that did not have a wet room as the bathroom. Just like simple things like like this. I talk about it like in more detail in my book, The Map Back to You. So grab it if you want like all of my like interesting like little adventures and travel moments. Um, all of a couple of mishaps, joyful times about solo traveling and finding myself on the road. But yes, understanding your non-negotiables is an important thing. Like think about it, and then you can like when you know this, you'll know varying degrees of how much you're able to tolerate or not in this new space. So like I said, I don't like the tiny bathroom, so I will take a tiny bathroom over a WC without a sink, for example. Um, Speaking about like different questions and non-negotiables, I also like imagine I don't think spending a lot of time on this, but at least imagine what kind of like daily life you want. Sometimes it's not easy to really imagine the realities of that because each country does their thing in their different way. So like when I was living in Colombia, I did not know that Colombians, at least in Bogota and in Facatativa where I was living, that they just generally start super early. There's it is such a morning country. Like everything is bustling at 7:30 a.m. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Crazy. Like so things like that are going to be like hard to like figure out, right? Um but me understanding that I am a night person helped me to cope in that, and also helped me to like clarify with like when I was working, and sometimes they would like set meetings at 7, and I'm like, guys, is it like for me to like just advocate a little bit like, can we have an afternoon meeting? Is it possible to have an afternoon meeting? Sometimes I'm just like, I'm not available. Is it possible to have an afternoon meeting? Like, but it was amazing to me. I think my battery's dying. It was amazing to me. Is it back? Yeah. It was amazing to me how at 7:30, just everything was just open and alive, and people were like, I felt like people were already halfway through their day in Colombia. Wow, no. Also, why I did not live in Colombia for a long time, because I would not be able to navigate and continue just living such a morning life. And so I lived in Colombia for 1 year. It was really, really great. I learned so much things about myself, but that was like one of the things. My next country could not be such an early country. If you're a morning person, go to Colombia. Cost of living is great. In my opinion, quite affordable. The people are friendly. Contrary to what you might believe, it's relatively safe. Um, and it's so diverse, especially the geography and the landscape of things. I think Colombia is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, at top five. And it was just a great place in this way. But I didn't actually like vibe or align with it too much in terms of like what I was looking for myself, for the life that I wanted. And definitely that morning vibe, that 7:30 vibe, that 7 a.m. vibe was not it's not it for me. So I ended up leaving after living a year there. But yeah, think about what kind of like daily life you want and try to like, you know, see if those things are like possible, things like this. It can impact like what kind of like neighborhood you want to go to, or how you search for neighborhoods, for example, or different cities. How, do you want to be in the middle of the city? Do you want to try being just outside? Do you want to be more countryside? Like things like this, figure those things out. Like understand like why am I considering my move abroad? Like why do I want to move abroad? What is the intention? It's for adventure, it's for escape, is it for a job? Is it for personal growth? Is it for, permanent residency? Whatever. Are you running from something or moving towards something? You need to know which it is, because if not, you're going to just end up looping, and not really, and your choice of country and how you want to move abroad might not be the best for you after you've arrived. What else should you know if you're thinking about moving abroad? I think we talked about a lot. Oh, like the different stages. So like in the move abroad process, like in the early stage, or when you move abroad in the early stage, everything's like exciting. But you also have logistic stress. And you're kind of like, if you're, in the move abroad process, you feel energized by the decision, but then the next time, in like the next minute, you might feel like overwhelmed by all of the admin, because it is a lot of paperwork, like hands down, a lot of paperwork. Um, this early stage of moving abroad, and I think this is the stage that you're in if you're thinking about it, then it's kind of like loud and active, and you're doing many things, and it's pulling you in many different directions, and it feels productive even when it can be like frustrating. But and this is why you need to like ground yourself, because so many things can be happening all at once, and it's like a very active moment. And so if you're not intentional and grounded in things that you're in your alignment, and your why, then this stage can easily just tip over into overwhelm all the time and stress all the time. And then when you arrive, I call it the honeymoon stage. So after you go through the whole process of logistics, admin, documentation, everything, like stamp of approval, yeah, baby, you can move abroad and live life and all those things. It's this honeymoon stage. and everything is kind of like surreal. But then there is this disorientation. It's both. I think this is the part of like living abroad that we don't like talk about a lot, is that it's kind of like a conundrum. Like everything exists at the same time. The positive and negatives are kind of just like happening at the same time to you. And it's an interesting experience. And I think we should, that, multiple things can be true at once. It's kind of like this. I was just going to say everything everywhere all at once. It's not quite that loopy, but yeah. So you have like the honeymoon period, but you're still kind of like disoriented because everything is new and it's a new culture and it's a different way of like living. So yeah, so for example, me living in India was more was less of a culture shock than me moving to France. I still preferred living in France, but it was just less of a culture shock. And this was because I was more around like Indian culture of things in Jamaica than I was around like French culture. And so I understood a little bit more of like what I might expect or not, etc. The food was more similar, I would say, because I used to eat I used to eat out, especially at lunch at Indian restaurants all the time. So I understood this. One of like our family friends were, Indians, and so we would also have this kind of like cultural exchange because they still practiced, a lot of their culture at home. So like, understanding Bollywood movies and stuff. I already had like a few favorites. I also understood that was not like my most favorite thing. But yeah, I had like more contact and exposure to Indian culture that I hadn't like realized. The weather is kind of like similar. They have a monsoon season, which is hurricane season. Jamaica has hurricanes. They have the monsoon. It's, that kind of like tropical, humid, hot climate, wet, dry. Of course, India is huge and different parts have also like different kind of like weather. But where I was living was like this. And so there were a lot more things that was familiar to me in the initial stage than when I moved to France, for example. So there is this kind of like honeymoon stage where everything is like surreal, but then you're also kind of like disoriented because you're gonna have culture shocks. You're gonna have new ways of figuring things, new processes that you need to like adopt and work through and stuff like this. And then the honeymoon phase, really, because you're excited, you're in this new chapter in your life, ready to get going. Um, and you're just like, wow, you're here and you did it. You went through all of that kind of like active admin process and you're here. It's just new and excitement. And then after that honeymoon phase, because honeymoon phase it's not like permanent, that's why it's a honeymoon phase. It's I don't know, kind of like an adjustment happens. And there's this kind of like reckoning, yes. There's this kind of like reckoning that happens, and this is where you will struggle, and this is where most people struggle, and this is the point where the point in people's move abroad plan that they think they've made a mistake, or sometimes they give up in this stage. But this is just the adjustment. It's the friction of the newness and the disorientation, and also the friction of shifting the way you now live and creating new habits for life, right? And there is that reckoning or kind of like emotional reckoning or adjustment stage that happens. And this is where I think most people struggle. And it happens like maybe 7, 8 months. Yeah. Like around this point. and it can last for like maybe a year, right? And this is kind of like the part where the newness kind of wears out, but you're not quite settled yet. You're really understanding that living abroad is not the same as like traveling abroad. You'll kind of like question if you made the right choice. And it's not failure. Like this part is integration. Like, oh, stay, hold. Don't make any rash decisions at this point. Like, give it one more year. Give it another at least 6 more months. It's the integration. Like, work through this process and don't try to like control it or restrict it or create a block. Like it's the integration of you integrating all your parts, shedding old habits, learning new habits. It's kind of like that beginner phase clumsiness that happens. It it's you will hit this stage, but just know that it really is about integration, and if you work through it, you're going to come out on the side much more immersed in the culture where you are and in this new life that you're building. And then I think the final stage is like settling. After that, you've integrated, and then everything becomes boring and real. Not boring and real, but your life kind of like feels normal again, and it's in a good way, and your daily routines become daily routines. Now you don't bite your eye, or you probably be like, why are there so many tourists? If you start saying, why are there so many tourists? As a foreigner in the country, then you're at the settled stage. You've integrated, you're there. It's hilarious, but yeah, once you're just like, even though you're a tourist too, right? You're a foreigner in this country and you are probably annoying the locals in your own way. But yeah, this is the final stage where everything becomes that kind of like boring and you have like your own routine, you have your own system, you have like your own network, your friends, you know where you start to have like favorite things. You have your favorite boulangerie, your favorite bakery, your favorite supermarket, your favorite, I don't know, bank or park or whatever. Like that's when, and you start like building a few connections, acquaintances, things like this. And this is the stage where you decide if it's working or not. It's not the stage before when you're integrating, etc. It's afterwards. It's when the things start becoming like a bit boring and real. This is where I would say, you sit back and you analyze, like, okay, now do I see myself living like this for, I don't know, another 5 years or whatever? That's a stage where you decide whether it's working or not, or for how long you want it to continue working. If it's working, do you want to make it like even more permanent, etc. Like that. And that's kind of like when you get to the long term stage of clarity and choice, and you know like where you want to choose to stay, or if you choose to leave, or you choose to like redesign again. So choose to stay might not even be like the country itself. Like maybe you're like, I don't like this city, I want to choose to leave to a different city, you want to move, etc. And here at that point, I think the important thing is to understand that, and throughout the whole process, but here is that you have that clarity and choice, and it becomes more visible to you that you're no longer like reacting to systems or admin or, the culture shocks of things. Is that now you're kind of like sitting down and choosing where you want to go or not. And so, why am I telling you this? As someone who's lived abroad for over 15 years now, I think understanding how, the move abroad process and the different stages that you go through, and understanding the importance of making that internal shift, etc. Knowing this landscape, like it helps. Knowing the landscape of moving abroad, of the different stages, different layers of decisions that you will encounter when you're moving abroad and when you start living abroad. I think it's important. It helps so much so that you don't panic when that honeymoon stage ends. and you don't think you're failing when you kind of start feeling lonely in, month 8, or you miss certain events back home, after a year, you start missing birthdays, or you can't go home for all the holidays, so you can't celebrate as much. And you understand that this discomfort is kind of like part of the process. And it's not a sign that you've made mistakes. It's not a sign that you've made a mistake, but you're like more aware of the trade-offs, because for everything there's going to be a trade-off, and you're able to like assess in a more grounded, integrated way of your choice of living abroad. And so that's why we're talking about this, right? I'm not like telling you not to move abroad. That's like your decision. You should move abroad. I think it's so much worth it. If you're thinking about it seriously and you're on this, if you're watching this, I think you are already in a serious state of contemplating your move abroad. Um, so I'm not trying to like tell you all of these things to dissuade you or anything, but I think having that kind of like awareness helps a lot more than not understanding how like the different kind of like details that we don't talk about when we move abroad. It helps you to prepare more, especially emotionally and internally, right? And so, yeah, while living abroad is not like an easy process, it's super duper, such a worthwhile thing that you can do. Um, I don't think it's like hard or bad. It has complex layers at some parts, but it's, yeah, like you learn so much about yourself, and there's such a freedom that comes with living abroad, where you're able, like, really being able to choose how you want to live and not fall into, you know, that kind of like you fall into the life of your lifestyle of like your culture, because you just grew up. And yeah, sometimes you just kind of like, well, everybody here does it this way, and so I'm doing it this way. I think it's a lot easier for us to get into that kind of like passive choice of living our lives when we stay at home in our hometowns or our home country where we grew up. And when you move abroad, or when you decide to move abroad and you live abroad, you're it's such a conscious choice, and it's such a conscious choice of, creating that life for you, that you're able to design it and choose and evaluate and align your desires and your needs with the life that you want. And it's not immediate. It's not, it's a process. And you build it like brick by brick, paperwork by paperwork, visa by visa, etc. But it's something that you're creating for yourself, and you get to decide every part of it. And you can undo and ignore everything that you don't like or you don't want, or you can add everything that you like, and you will also learn even new things. And I think that's the part that is so exciting. It's not like this perfect plan, but you will fully discover a different side of yourself that only living abroad will be able to give you. You will not be able to find it in your home country. And so this is why I'm sharing, and this is why I'm giving you this kind of like, this is why I'm giving you, you know, this insider detail, this insider info and insights from my life, and how, living abroad shaped me, and from someone who has done it so many times. I just wanted to share this part with you so that you can understand and make an even more informed decision, and be better at aligning your desires to your move abroad plan. So, yeah, understand the terrain before you go. Do the internal work before the logistical admin paperwork. Clarify your values before you start like researching countries and visas, and know what you're trying to build, not just what you're trying to escape. Because yeah, many times we move abroad because like we've outgrown our life and we don't want this kind of life anymore, and so you're moving abroad for that. But it's not just focusing on what you've outgrown and what you're escaping. It's knowing, but this is what I want to build now and moving towards that. So do those things, right? Let me know in the comments which part of the stage that you are, which of these questions that I asked that resonates with you. Let me know in the comments, or if you have any questions, drop a question that you have about the move abroad process, and I will respond to all of the comments. I read them all, so let me know. I'm Diedre. I help you and women travel solo, live abroad, and design life that you love because you deserve it. See you at the next video. Ciao.